This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Hey, good morning everyone. Bruchim Habayim. Welcome to the Kollel Igur de Pirka here in Kew Garden Hills, New York. Afreilichen Tu B'Shvat. Well, we know that Tu B'Shvat is a day on the calendar that is not mentioned often in the Shulchan Aruch. I believe it's not mentioned more than 2 times in the entirety of the Shulchan Aruch. And when it is mentioned, the halachos don't seem to be of major significance, and only that it's brought in relevance to not saying Tachnon. So let's begin with the following question raised by the Shemi Shmuel in year Tafresh Ayin Daled. Shemi Shmuel wants to know, why in the world would we not say Tachnon on Tu B'Shvat? What happens on Tu B'Shvat? Nothing happens on Tu B'Shvat. The Gemara says that is the day, according to Rashi, that the sap begins to rise up in the tree. And once the sap begins rising in the tree, so now it begins the process of the formation of the new fruits, which is of little significance to anybody's life. And that is the reason why Tu B'Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanos. In other words, the time, the point of demarcation of when to start the new Meiser cycle. When was last year's Meiser? When begins this year's Meiser is Tu B'Shvat, because the process of the formation of the fruits begins on Tu B'Shvat when the sap rises up in the tree. But what does it have to do with Tachnon? We know that Tachnon is only omitted if it's a day that has Kedusha, a day that has a mitzvah, or a day that has a Nes. Tu B'Shvat has none of the above. Bishlama, Tu B'Av, the Gemara says in the end of Tainis and in Bava Basra, a number of different happy occasions that coincided with Tu B'Av. But Tu B'Shvat, nothing great really happens. I mean, does it really make you happy that the sap in the banana tree is rising up? I mean, does that really significantly improve the quality of your life? And therefore the question is, why do we omit Tachnon on Tu B'Shvat? Okay, now let's start with a very important diuk, which is very often the starting point whenever we speak about Tu B'Shvat, because as we know, the Mishnayos also only have a very brief discussion about Tu B'Shvat. So take a look at number 1. B'yechad B'Shvat Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. On the first day of Shvat is Rosh Hashanah for the tree, which is also of note. But see TorahAnytime.com for a shiur on that subject, why the Mishnah says La Ilan and not La Ilanois. After all, everything else in the Mishnah is Melachim, Shanim, Regalim. Everything else in the Mishnah is plural. Why by the Ilan it's only singular? And that, the Bnei Yissaschar says, is to be Merames, that on Tu B'Shvat you should pray to have a good esrog in the upcoming year. But that's a separate subject. But what we're going to focus on today are the next words of the Mishnah, Ki divrei Beis Shammai. Not divrei Beis Shammai, like it usually says in the Mishnah, divrei Ram Gamliel, divrei Rab Tarfain, divrei Rabbi Akiva, divrei Chachamim, divrei Rab Meir. No, it's Ki divrei Beis Shammai, which seems to imply that when Beis Shammai says that Echad B'Shvat is Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, that is in concert, that is in accordance with Beis Shammai's worldview in general. This opinion of Beis Shammai, that the first day of Shvat is Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, is in sync with Beis Shammai's worldview. So the question is, why would that be the case? Beis Hillel Oimrim b'chamisha asar bai. And friends, this is the diuk of the Bnei Yissaschar, Rav Tzvi Melech Midinov. Hine number 2, Hine Oimroi ki divrei Beis Shammai bekaf. Why does it in fact say ki divrei Beis Shammai, not divrei Beis Shammai? And Rabbi Kusil Yehuda Halberstam, none other than the Rebbe part you got right? The Kloisenberger Rebbe. I was just zeichet to be at his kever in Netanya. The Kloisenberger Rebbe cites the diuk of his Zayda, the Bnei Yissaschar. Why does the Mishnah say ki divrei Beis Shammai? And therefore, the Kloisenberger Rebbe offers the following incredible approach, and then he adds a layer to it, and then he adds another layer to it. So let's learn the first step. The first step is, if I were to ask you, when did God Almighty create the world? In which month? Machloikes. Good, that's the correct answer. Machloikes. Rabbi Lezer says the world was created in Tishrei. In Tishrei the Avos were born, the Avos passed away in Tishrei. Yitzchak was born in Nisan, and the Mishna, the Brisa continues. But Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion the world was created in Tishrei. On the other hand, Rabbi Shua is of the opinion B'Nisan Nivra Ha'olam. And in fact, the Tosfos brings and the Arizal concurs that really Elu Ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chayim, one was B'Machshava and one was B'Maisa. But Al Pi Pshat, we have a Machlokes Tanoim, when did God create the world? Nisan or in Tishrei. On Rosh Hashanah we say Zeh Hayom Tchilas Ma'asecha Zikara in Liyom Rishon. That seems to be like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. However, we do have to note that when we say B'Tishrei Nivra Ha'olam, it's not exactly accurate, because while God created man on Rosh Hashanah, but that means man was the sixth day of creation. The first day of creation was then what? Chaf Hei Elul. And in fact, Tosfos over here in number 5, and this is cited in the Ran as well, that the first day of creation must have been on the 25th day of Elul. Okay, amazing. So that means, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the first day of creation was the 25th day of Elul, and according to Rabbi Yeshua, the first day of creation was the 25th day of Adar. Right? 5 days before. In other words, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the world was created in Tishrei, so the first day of creation was Chaf Hei Elul. According to Rabbi Shua, that the world was created in Nisan, the first day of creation was Chaf Hei Adar. Okay, that's the first point. Second point. The Kloisenberger Rebbe quotes his Zayda, the Bnei Yissaschar, who has another brilliant idea. And that is, the Gemara in the very beginning of Masechta Soita says that here you have a child who's born, and already, at the time he was born, it is already predetermined who his marriage partner will be. But more than that, not only is it determined before a person is born, it's already determined before the gender is determined who the person will marry. Because the Gemara says in Soita, Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Arboim Yoim Koidem Yitziras Havlad. 40 days before the embryo is formed, Bas Kol Yoitzeis V'Aimeres, a heavenly voice proclaims, Bas Ploini LePloini, the daughter of so-and-so to so-and-so. Why the daughter of so-and-so? Because we don't know who she is yet. She might not even have been born yet, but the father was around. So we say the daughter of so-and-so to so-and-so. Not only that, Bayis Ploini LePloini, the house of so-and-so to so-and-so. Soda Ploini LePloini. Your life is already pre-programmed from before the formation of the embryo. What do we learn from this Gemara? Says the Bnei Yissaschar, what we learn from this Gemara is that before the Rebbeinu Shem executes a plan, he conceives the plan. How many days before a plan is executed is it conceived? 40 days before. Well, if 40 days before someone is created, his partner in life is already determined, then certainly 40 days before God is going to carry out something of major significance, He's going to conceive the idea before. So if the world was created on, let's say, not Aleph Tishrei, but Chaf Hei Elul, then 40 days before, we know God created the world for who? For us, for the Jewish people, Bereishis Bar Leikim. God created the world for Reishis, for Klal Yisrael. 40 days before, it already entered the mind of Hashem, and He conceived the idea of creating the world. So when did God conceive the idea of creating the world, if the world was created Chaf Hei Elul? Tu B'Av. That's the significance of Tu B'Av. Everybody says Tu B'Av is a special day designated for Shidduchim. Why is it a day designated for Shidduchim? Because that was the day that it was conceived in the mind of the Das Elyon to create the world. The Shidduch between the Boirei and the Olam was planned on Tu B'Av. Well, that goes according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, that the world was created in Tishrei. And the first day of creation was Chaf Hei Elul, and 40 days before that was Tu B'Av. But according to the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, that the world was created Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and therefore the first day of creation was Chaf Hei Elul. So when did it enter the mind of the Rebbeinu Shalom to create the world? Tu B'Shvat. Now, so according to Rabbi Eliezer, there's no such thing as Tu B'Shvat. It's all Tu B'Av. Tu B'Shvat is irrelevant. It's of no significance. Nothing ever happened on Tu B'Shvat according to Rabbi Eliezer. And according to Rabbi Yeshua, the world was conceived on Tu B'Shvat. Now, the Gemara Masechta Shabbos calls Rabbi Eliezer a name. Does anybody remember the name? He's a Shemuti. Daf Kuf Lamed Amud Beis in Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer is a Shemuti. Now what does it mean he's a Shemuti? Rashi says Shemuti means he was put in Cherem. We know the famous story, Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol. He argued on the Chachamim, and the Chachamim put him in Cherem. But then Rashi quotes Yushalmi. And Rashi, in the Gemara says, "V'haya hadavar kasha l'chachamim heich manichin divrei chacham loisim k'Rebbe Eliezer." How could we forsake the words of the rabbis and follow Rebbe Eliezer? Rebbe Eliezer shmusi. Rebbe Eliezer is a shmusi. Says Rashi, you know what shmusi means? Uvetalmid Yerushalmi mefaresh shmusi mitalmidei Shammai haya. Rebbe Eliezer is a student of Shammai, and we don't paskin like Shammai. So how can we paskin like Rebbe Eliezer? Meaning, we assume now that when Rebbe Eliezer says something, he got it from his Rebbe. Who's Rebbe Elezer's Rebbe? Shammai. Rebbe Elezer is a Shammai-nik. You know, as they would say in Israel. You know? He's a Shammai-nik. Whatever you are, you have a nik at the end of it, right? So Rebbe Elezer is a Shammai-nik. So it comes out. If Rebbe Elezer says the world was created in Tishrei, then where do you think he got that the world was created in Tishrei from? He got it from Shammai. Now Shammai does not hold of Tu B'Shvat. Shammai holds of Tu B'Av. So that means Shammai would say Tu B'Shvat is irrelevant. You might as well make it Rosh Chodesh. Therefore, the Mishna says, Be'echad B'Shvat Rosh Hashanah L'Ilan Kid Divrei Beis Shammai. In accordance with Beis Shammai in general, that the world was created in Tishrei, and therefore there's no significance to Tu B'Shvat, and therefore it's all about Tu B'Av, and therefore Beis Shammai says you might as well make it Rosh Chodesh, and therefore it's Kid Divrei Beis Shammai. But Beis Hillel Oimrim, Beis Hillel would say, no, come on, the world was created in Nisan, and therefore it's all about Chafei Adar, and therefore it's all about Tu B'Shvat, and therefore Rebbe Eliezer says, Tu B'Shvat is a special day. It was the day of the conception of the creation of the world, but we still don't understand what does it got to do with the trees. Okay? But this is the first, what? This is the first layer of the Shiur. That when Beis Shammai says it's Be'echad B'Shvat, this is not an isolated statement of Beis Shammai. This somehow is in sync with Beis Shammai's worldview, like Rebbe Eliezer, that the world was created in Tishrei, and therefore there's no significance to Tu B'Shvat. It's all about Tu B'Av. Comes the Kloisenberger Rebbe, and he takes it one step further. And he says, why do you think Rabbi Eliezer, who's a student of Shammai, says the world was created in Tishrei, and Rabbi Yeshua, who apparently is a Beis Hillel man, says the world was created in Nisan? Very simple, says the Kloisenberger Rebbe. He says, we know Beis Shammai, and the Arizal brings this out, Beis Shammai is Midas Hadin. Beis Hillel is Midas Harachamim. By the way, we know Beis Hillel holds the Masechta Yevamos, Aseh Doichel Lois Aseh. Beis Shammai holds Ein Aseh Doichel Lois Aseh. Why? So the Ramban writes in this week's Parsha, in Parshas Yisroi, why is Aseh Doichel Lois Aseh? Because when you perform an Aseh, you're demonstrating love of God. When you refrain from violating a lav, you're demonstrating fear of God. What's greater? Love is greater than fear. Therefore, Aseh Doichel Lois Aseh. But says many, that's only Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says Aseh Doichel Lois Aseh because Beis Hillel is a love man. But Beis Shammai is a fear man, and therefore Beis Shammai holds Ein Aseh Doichel Lois Aseh. Therefore, Beis Shammai probably holds the world was created b'midas ha-din. And therefore he says the world was created in Tishrei, the Chodesh of Din, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, because Beis Shammai holds that he's a midas hadin man. And therefore he says, Bereshis bara Eloi Kim. Bereshis are the letters Aleph, Tishrei. Because that's the Shita Beis Shammai, the world was created b'Din. Therefore Beis Shammai says the world was created in Tishrei, the month of Din. And Rabbi Yeshua, who's following Beis Hillel, says, we're into love. It's Eis Doidim. We know in Chodesh Nisan, it's a time of great Avas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We were not even Zoicha to be taken out of Mitzrayim. Hashem just took us out because of His great love for us. And therefore the world was created Barachamim, and therefore the world was created in Chodesh Nisan. Fine. That's the second step. The third step, I said, well, If Rabbi Eliezer holds the world was created in Tishrei, because Rabbi Eliezer is a Shammai man, that the world was created Bedin, and that's why Rabbi Eliezer does not give significance to Tu B'Shvat, because Tu B'Shvat is irrelevant in Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel holds the world was created in Nisan, because he's a Rachamim man, and therefore there's significance to Tu B'Shvat. I had the following idea, but then I saw the Kloisenberger Rebbe gave this idea as well. And that is that very Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that brings the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua when the world was created, also brings another machlokes. And that machlokes is, when will Mashiach come? When will we be redeemed? So we always say, B'Nisan Nigalu B'Nisan Asidin Ligal. Rabbi Eliezer says, what are you talking about? Why, just because we redeemed the first time in Nisan, we have to redeem the second time in Nisan? It's like the guy, I'm learning with, I remember in yeshiva. So this has to be the pshat. This is how I learned it the first time. I said, Rabbi, you learned it wrong the first time. Just because you learned it that way the first doesn't mean it's correct. So just because B'Nisan Nigalu, why does that mean B'Nisan Asin Legal? Rabbi Eliezer says, B'Tishrei Nivra Ha'olam. B'Nisan Nigalu, U'V'Tishrei Asidin Legal. That's Rabbi Elazar's Shita. But Rabbi Shua says no. B'Nisan Nivra Ha'olam. B'Nisan Nigalu. U'V'Nisan Asidin Ligal. So it's a machlokes Tanoim. When will the Geula happen? By the way, Rabbi Eliezer learns Gzeira Shava, Shofar, Shofar. It says, Tiku b'chodesh Shofar by Tishrei, and it says, B'yoimahu yitaka b'Shofar Gadol. Just like the first Shofar is in the month of Tishrei, the Shofar of Mashiach will be in the month of Tishrei. And Rabbi Shua says, no, what are you talking about? Leil Shimurim. This is a night which is guarded, that the Rebbeinu Shalom has predestined the night of Pesach and the month of Nisan to redeem us. Okay. So now I thought I discovered America over here, but the Kloisenberg Rebbe says this, and he said even he didn't discover America because it's in the writings of the Reginer. But then we're going to try to add something, at least have some contribution over here. And the Kloisenberg Rebbe says an idea like a flash of lightning. You ready for this? It was worthwhile to come down to this world just to hear this. That means we have machlokes. When will the redemption happen? Rabbi Eliezer says Tishrei. Rabbi Shua says Nisan. But let's think for a moment. Because Rabbi Eliezer says Tishrei. But really, in reality, that's when Mashiach comes. But you need someone to come be mevaser. You need a report. You need the tidings. So if the world was created not in Tishrei but Chaf Hei Elul, then very likely the premonition of Geula and the tidings of Geula will already begin Chaf Hei Elul, as opposed to in Rabbi Yeshua, where the redemption will come in Nisan, but the tidings and the premonition will already begin Chaf Hei Adar. So I had the following idea, and the Kloisenberg Rebbe says the same idea. Fine. So this is when the redemption will happen. And this is when the tidings will occur. But we said in the beginning of the Shiur, whenever God executes something, He conceives of the notion 40 days earlier. So if we were to ask, when does it rise up in the Das Elyon? When does the Rebbeinu Shalom, so to speak, conceive the concept of bringing the Geula? So it's going to depend. It's going to be machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer is going to say the conception of Geula begins on Tu B'Av. And Rabbi Yeshua is going to say that the conception of Geula, when that juice rises up, Lefnei the Das Elyon, the ultimate Elon, the Elon Hagadol. We know Elon is 91, the two names of Hashem, Shem Havaya and the Shem Adnos. When does the concept of Geula rise up in the mind of the Das Elyon? That would be on Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is a day of the year that it's Oila b'machshavtoi shel Boira Olam, to redeem Klal Yisrael. And says the Kloisenberger Rebbe, then it comes out that if you want to know when does, like the sparks, what we call Aschalta de Geulta, when is the beginning of the redemption? Tu B'Shvat.
So that's according to Nisan. What do you do according to Tishrei? It's starting.
You're right. Tu B'Av, exactly. Tu B'Av. That's why it's Kid Divrei Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai would say, hey, nothing happens today. Today's irrelevant. Today's insignificant. Be'echad B'Shvat, Kid Divrei Beis Shammai. But Beis Hillel, who's going Lefi Rabbi Yeshua, says the premonitions and the introduction and the sparks of Geula begin on Tu B'Shvat. In fact, the Kloisenberger Rebbe brings the number 14, that in the Sefer of the Rav HaKodesh Mirajin, he says, Chamisha Asar B'Shvat is somehow the Keser of the days of Geula and the Simcha. Now, Morav Rabbi Sai, I would like to suggest that this would answer the Shemi Shmuel's question, that why don't we say Tachnon on Tu B'Shvat just because some maple syrup is rising up in the heart of the tree, therefore we shouldn't say Tachnon? I mean, I could think of, some yard site would be a better reason not to say Tachnon than the maple syrup in the tree. What's that all about? Why shouldn't we say Tachnon? How is it a Yom Simcha? But we understand today is the day of the conception and the possibility that to rise up in the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ligol as Yisrael. I don't think so, no. No. Now, this would explain possibly why we specifically eat fruits on Tu B'Shvat. Because what do the fruits have to do with Geula? But the truth is that we find in many sources that the proliferation of fruits is a great premonition of the coming of the Geula. In fact, the whole service of Tu B'Shvat, which became more popular lately, is not found really in any of the writings of the Arizal. It comes from a very controversial sefer called the Chemdas Hayamim, which we once spoke about, which there is discussion who is the author of the Chemdas Hayamim. It may have been attributed to the prophet of the Shabtai Tzvi, and that's a very major subject. Who wrote the Chemdas Hayamim, and whether he wrote it or he didn't write it, it's pretty much endorsed by almost all the Gedolim today. But in the psukim that the Chemdas Hayamim cite regarding the minhag of eating fruits, the psukim he quotes are the psukim that use the blossoming and the blooming of fruits as like an indication of the return of Klal Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. I'll give you a few examples. You don't have it on the sheet, but we say in Parak Tzadik Vav, which is the second parak of Kabbalah Shabbos, we say Yismach Hashamayim v'Sagel Haaretz Yiram Hayomim Loyoy Yaloy Sadai v'Chol Asher Boy Oz Yiranenu Kol Atzei Ya'ar. Then they will sing all the trees of the forest. What does that mean? So listen to what David HaMelech is saying. David is saying, right now the trees of the forest do not sing, but the day will come, days are coming, right, that the trees of the forest are going to sing. What's that all about? When will the trees of the forest sing? So take a look at number 17. The pasuk says in Bechukaisai, "V'nasati gishmeichem be'itam," I will give you rain at the right time. "V'nasna ha'aretz yivula," the earth will give its produce. The eitz hasada yitain peryai, and the tree of the field will give forth its fruit. The tree of the field? Trees in a field don't produce fruit. Only trees in an orchard produce fruit. Says Rashi, these are barren trees, but they are destined to produce fruit. We have a tradition that in the future, the barren trees will produce fruit, because when God created the trees, He said, Eitz peri, oisa pri. He wanted all trees to produce fruit. But because of the sin of Adam HaRishon, some trees did not produce fruit. So in the future, the symbol of the Achras Hayamim is when all trees produce fruit. In fact, this is an astounding Gemara. If you wanted to know what is the clearest sign in the coming of the redemption, the clearest sign in the coming of the Geula, this is the most explicit Gemara that we have of the best indication that we know that Mashiach is coming. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin on the pasuk in Yechezkel, "V'atem harei Yisrael," and you, mountains of Israel, "And pechem titenu," let your branches give forth, "Uperiyechem tisu la'ami Yisrael," and let your fruit bear for my nation Israel. Ki kervu lava, I am close to coming. Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin, "Ein lecha kates megula mizeh." There's no more open redemption. There's no greater sign of redemption than if you go to the land of Israel and Eretz Yisrael is blossoming and blooming with fruits. That's the clearest sign in the coming of the Geula. Says Rashi, Kishatitein Eretz Yisrael Piria Ba'ayin Yafeh. When Israel produces a lot of fruits, then you know the end is coming. And the Maharsha explains because there's this amazing interrelation between the land of Israel and the Jewish people. That when the Jewish people were not living in Israel, everybody knows before the 30s, before 48, Israel was a desert, it was a swamp. It didn't produce anything. Because unless her children are in the land is barren and desolate. And as soon as we return, all of a sudden it becomes an oasis. That's just the spiritual phenomena of the land of Israel. So the Gemara is saying, the clearest sign in the coming of Mashiach are the fruits of Israel. In fact, the Gemara says in Megillah, does anybody know why do we say Tikab b'shofar gadol right after what words? Baruch atah Hashem, mevarech hashanim. Because if you see Israel as Barech Aleinu, when you see the land of Israel producing fruits, you could be sure soon we will hear the Tikah b'shofar gadol l'chirosenu. So that's what the Gemara says. Halavai, we hope this is what we're seeing. But the clearest symbol of the coming of Geula are the fruits of Eretz Yisrael. So could it be, is it possible to say, that on the day that it rises up in Hashem's mind to redeem Klal Yisrael, and what day is that? Well, if the world was created in Nisan, and the first day of creation is Chafei Adar, and the conception of that concept is Tu B'Shvat, so we hope, we say, Ribbono Shel Olam, today is the day that it could begin to arise in your mind to redeem us. We lift up the fruits of Israel, and we say, Ribbono Shel Olam, be mavarech them, show them to us, because once the fruits are coming, we know that the Geula is on its way. Mav Rabbi Sai, maybe we could add just one little detail, a very beautiful idea. And by the way, the Atzei Chaim of Satmar, he says like this. He says, that's the meaning of the pasuk, Oz Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar. Then all the trees of the forest will sing. Not only the fruit trees, but as Rashi says, that the trees of the forest, like the pasuk says, "V'nosati geshmechem beitam v'nosna haaretz yivla v'etz hasada yitem peryai." Then the future, even the barren trees will produce fruits. Therefore, we say in the future, "Az yiranenu kol atzei yar." All the trees will sing, because he says very simply, the trees don't all sing. The apple tree sings. You know why the apple tree sings? Because no one's knocking it down except for George Washington. And the orange tree sings, because nobody can knock it down. You're not allowed to cut down a fruit tree. But you are allowed to cut down a regular tree. But the day will come that all the regular trees will produce fruits, and no one will be able to cut them down. So then it will be Oz Yiranenu Kol Atzei Yar. But now, just want to add one beautiful nakuda. To add a beautiful dimension to why we specifically eat the fruits. The Gemara tells us, it's a Mishna and Saita. Rabbi Yeshua, from the day the temple was destroyed, there's no day that doesn't have more curse than the next day. The dew doesn't fall for blessing. Nital tam haperos. Fruits don't taste the way they used to. Rabbi Yossi says, the fatness of fruits is gone. You know how it is? You're hungry and you need an apple. It don't help, right? It's too light. It doesn't fill you up. The shuman of fruits is gone. You don't have it on your sheets. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, tahara natla tam v'es hareach. Because there's no more purity in Klal Yisrael, which was stopped after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, we don't have the taste and fragrance of fruits anymore. In fact, the Ben Ishchai writes that the Rashi Tevos of the word tahara is tam haperos reach haperos. Because we don't have tara anymore, we don't have the taste of fruits and the smell of fruits. In fact, the Gemara in Saita brings a story that Rav Huna found a very plump date, a date oozing with juice, like in the good old days. And his son Rabbi said, I smell a plump date. And his father said, how do you smell it? From the day the temple was destroyed, we don't have that strong smell in a fruit anymore. And his father said, it must be you still have the purity of before the temple was destroyed. But what we learn from here is that the fruit dramatically plummeted with the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. The fruits used to be more luscious, they used to be more juicy, they used to be more fatty, they used to have a better fragrance, they used to have better taste. So is it possible that on the day that it rises up, Das Elyon, to redeem Klal Yisrael, how are we going to know that the Rebbe Hashem is bringing us back? What are going to be the physical manifestations of the return to Eretz Yisrael and the ultimate rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash? Well, we know there's one thing in this world that from it we could tell Chorban, but by the same token we should be able to tell Binyan. So could it be we pick up those fruits on Tu B'Shvat and we taste those fruits? We're searching. Is the smell back? Is the taste back? Is the Shuman back? Is the Rebbe Hashem, is it being Oile B'das Hamakam to redeem us? Because the greatest indicator, the greatest barometer will be in the Tam and the Reach of the Peiros. By the way, that's the reason why I don't eat Bakser. You can eat the... No, you might as well eat the table, you know? So and the other Bakser, you got to check for worms. So lots of luck learning how to do that. What? I'll believe it when I see it, you know? Yeah. So that's the connection between the Peiros and Tu B'Shvat. It's interesting. What bracha achroinu do we make on Peiros ha'aretz? We make an ala mechya. Now, al ha'etz v'al pri ha'etz, right? There's a text, there's a nusach in the al ha'etz v'al pri ha'etz that we don't have in Birchas HaMazon. We say v'haleinu l'soicha v'samcheinu b'vinyana v'noichal b'riyav v'nisbal tavara u'nevarechecha aleha b'kedusha of tahara. What does tahara got to do with fruits? We don't say tahara in Birchas HaMazon. Why do we say tahara in Al Eitz Al Pri Eitz? So the Avnei Shoyham, Rav Moshe Leib Shachar, and Rav Shlomo Zalman used to quote this. He writes that since the Gemara says what took away the taste of fruits is the lack of tahara in Klal Yisrael, so therefore we say, God, return us to Israel so we could eat the fruits the way they used to be and make a blessing on it with the proper tahara, because it's the lack of tahara which has taken away the real taste of fruits. But hold on to your socks. This is the grand finale. Because there's another Nakuda over here. So far we learned that there's Machlokes Tanoim. Rabbi Lezer says the world was created in Tishrei. Rabbi Shiur says it's created in Nisan. And therefore, according to Rabbi Lezer, the first day of creation is Chafei Elul, and the conception is Tu B'Av. As opposed to Rabbi Shiur, the world was created in Nisan. First day of creation is Chafei Adar, and the conception is Tu B'Shvat. And the reason why they hold these respective opinions is Rabbi Lezer is a Shammai man, and he says the world was created B'Din, and therefore the world was created in Tishrei. And Rabbi Shiur is like Beis Hillel, the world was created Barachamim and Nisan. And one more thing. There happens to be another Machlokes, Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shiur, amazingly. Look at number 24. When the Geula, now, we said there's another Machlokes, when will the Geula happen? Rabbi Lezer says the Geula will happen in Tishrei, Rabbi Shiur says it will happen in Nisan. There's a third Machlokes. Do Klal Yisrael have to do tshuva for Mashiach to come? If you look at number 24, Rabbi Lezer says if Klal Yisrael does tshuva, we'll be redeemed. And if we don't do tshuva, we won't be redeemed. Rabbi Yeshua says, what do you mean if we don't do tshuva? Then we won't be redeemed. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us a king who will have gzeros kashos. Sounds like a Democrat or something. V'Yisrael oisin tshuva u'machziran lemutav. And Klal Yisrael will do tshuva, and he'll bring us back to the right path. So the Mefarshim ask, Rabbi Shiur just said the exact same thing as Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer said, if we do tshuva, we'll be redeemed. If we don't do tshuva, we won't be redeemed. And Rabbi Shiur says, God will make sure we do tshuva. That's what Rabbi Lezer said. You have to do tshuva to be redeemed. What? You know, what's Rabbi Shiur adding? There's no machlokes here. Everybody agrees you have to do tshuva. So the Mefarshim explain that Rabbi Lezer says you have to do a real tshuva to be redeemed. And if you don't do a real full-fledged tshuva, we won't be redeemed. And Rabbi Shiur says, nah, God will just give us a difficult leader and He'll squeeze a tshuva out of us, but it doesn't necessarily have to be such a high level tshuva. It'll be a lower level of tshuva. But the way the Achronim explain this Gemara is as follows. Rabbi Lezer holds will be redeemed in the month of Tishrei. Tishrei is the month of tshuva. Therefore, Rabbi Lezer holds, in order to be redeemed, we have to do tshuva. On the other hand, Rabbi Shiur says we'll be redeemed in Nisan. When God redeemed us in Nisan the first time, we did tshuva? No. We were on a high level? No. We were on the 49th level of Tumah. Had we remained there a moment longer, we would have fallen to the point of no return. God had to give us government handouts of Bris Milah and Dam Pesach to get us out. So they're going l'shitase. Rabbi Lezer, who holds we're redeemed in Tishrei because we're redeemed in the month of tshuva, he holds you have to do tshuva. Rabbi Shiur holds we're redeemed in Nisan. It's the month of freebies. It's Arusa de Le'ela. So he holds we don't really have to do tshuva. Now, so it comes out, if we're redeemed in Tishrei, we gotta deserve it. We have to do tshuva. If we're redeemed in Nisan, we don't really have to deserve it. So when does it rise up in the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to redeem us for no reason at all? Tu B'Shvat. So Tu B'Shvat is the day of the ultimate gift from heaven, which is, the Rebbe Shalom says, you know what? You guys are not going to do tshuva, I'll redeem you anyway. Tu B'Shvat is the day of the ultimate fruits from heaven. That the Rebbe Shalom decide, forget the whole Tishrei thing, with Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and Slicha, Mechila, Kapara, and Tshuva, and Tanesim. Forget it, I'm just going to yank you out. Meaning on Tu B'Shvat it rises up in the mind of the Rebbe Shalom just to yank us out, even though we don't deserve it. So certainly that calls for no tachnan. But then the Rebbe Shalom gave me a gift from heaven. Mamish lo yu'uman ki yisupa. You ready for this? If you look at the end of the Torah, and you count up the psukim in the end of the Parshas of the Torah. So let's start with number 31. How many psukim in Parshas Vayelech? So they're really 30. It says 70 because it's together with Nitzavim. And then Nitzavim number 30 has 40 psukim. And then Hazinu has 52 psukim. Yeah? So Rabbi Moshe Wolfson brings out an incredible remez that there are different kinds of Jews and different ways to get slicha v'kapara. You have some Jews who are on a very, very high level. They could be zoicha to goodness and happiness and success in 30 days on Rosh Hashanah. Starting Rosh Chodesh Elul, they go to Parshas Vayelech, and in 30 days, they seal the deal, nechtavim v'nechtamim la'alter l'chaim. You have some Jews, they're not Vayelech Jews. Vayelech's not going to cut it for them. They need a few extra days of tshuva. They need 10 extra days. They're like Beinanim. But by the time Yom Kippur is over, by the time they get through Nitzavim, which is 40 days, 40 psukim, they're able to seal the deal, and they're good to go. By the end of Yom Kippur, they say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. They blow the shofar, and they're good to go. They will get a year of happiness and success. But there's some Jews, they take a little bit longer. They need to go through the avodah of Sukkos. They need to take their Luv and Esrog and sit in the Sukkah and have Hoshana Rabbah. But by day 52, by the time Hazinu is over, when you get to Shmini Atzeres, they're able, when they finally send out the Kvitlach, they're able to seal the deal and have a happy, successful, sweet year. So Vayelech is for the big tzaddikim. Nitzavim is for the Beinanim. For people even on a lower madrega, they need Parshas Hazinu. And says Rav Wolfson, and what about people who they can't even finagle it, not on a Rosh Hashanah, not on a Yom Kippur, not on a Hoshana Rabbah? So they go till Zois Chanukah. Right? There's a concept. Zois Chanukah is the mamish, the final chasima. So where does Zois Chanukah come in? So Rav Wolfson says very simple. 30, that's Vayelech, plus 40, that's 70, plus 52, Hazinu, 122. 122, 52 is 122. 30, 40, 50 to 122. 122 days into the year is Zois Chanukah. 30, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, that's 120-ish, 119 or so, plus a few days into into Teves is Zois Chanukah. So here is the remez that if you can't make it on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah, you have until Zois Chanukah to get in. That's why. What parsha to? When do those who are not Zoicha on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or Hoshana Rabbah, when are they Zoicha? By the end of Hazinu. That's why right after Hazinu we say, what word? What word comes right after Hazinu? The Zois! That's Zois Chanukah. So Zois HaBracha, right? So Rabbi Moshe Wolfson said, his son-in-law said, Shver, you don't need to add up Vayelech, Nitzavim, and Hazinu to get 122, because before Vayelech is Kisavai, which is 122 psukim. But now he has a kasha. His kasha is, and what do you do with V'zois HaBracha? So he says, the Chida quotes Rav Moshe Zakuto, that the Zohar says there are 53 Parshios, but the question is there are really 54, and the answer is V'zois HaBracha doesn't count because you don't count it, you don't lean it on Shabbos. But I say no. I say don't forget V'zois HaBracha. Because if you can't make it on a Rosh Hashanah, and you can't make it on a Yom Kippur, and you can't make it on Hoshana Rabbah, and you can't even make it Zois Chanukah, there's still one more option. Tu B'Shvat! 41 days after Zois Chanukah is Tu B'Shvat! And that's mamish the last time. Why is that the last time? Because Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Hoshana Rabbah and Zois Chanukah are only the last manim in the system of Rabbi Eliezer that you got to do something. But there's another system. And the other system is you don't got to do anything. That's the system of Rabbi Shua, where the Rebbe Shalom says, in Midas Hadin, in Rabbi Elazar's a Shmusi, you got to do tshuva. But in the system of Rabbi Shua, even if you're Aram Ve'eria, even if you're naked and bare, even if you're Amem Teshari Tumah, it could be Oile B'das HaMakom just to redeem Klal Yisrael. What's the siman at the end of Zois HaBracha? Ge'uel siman. Ge'ula is the siman. 41 days after Zois Chanukah is Tu B'Shvat. So it comes out that there's another way to be redeemed. And now, today, begins a new part of the year. The first half of the year is the half of Rabbi Lezer, Midas Hadin, Tshuva, Benisa Nigalu, V'Tishrei Asin Ligal. You need a Rosh Hashanah, you need a Yom Kippur, you need something! But then today, as the sap rises in the tree, it is Oile B'das HaMakom. Maybe this year is going to be the year. So we eat the fruits, as the Gemara tells us, the sweetness of the fruits, the tara of the fruits, the proliferation of the fruits is the greatest harbinger of the coming of the Mashiach. If we could taste the new tara and the fruits, then it means the redemption is on its way. So we should be zoicha today, the day of the conception of Gulas Yisrael. We should be zoicha. It should be oile b'das hamakom, legolas Yisrael, v'mher v'yameinu, amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.